There are so many transfer stories involving West Ham right now. It's quite difficult to keep up to date on everything that's going on. So I'm going to bring you the main headlines. Of course, it will include Lucas Paqueta, but also apparently the latest being Mateus Fernandes is being chased by Manchester clubs, or as some newspaper articles or social media columns would suggest, West Ham are pushing the sale of Mateus Fernandes. I'll get to that in a moment. If you're new to this channel, or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before but yet to subscribe, there's a QR code that's appeared in the top corner there. All you've got to do is click on that and subscribe to the channel, free of charge to subscribe. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button. There's also a hype button below the video. If you click on that, it allows other viewers to watch this video. And if you're feeling generous, you can become a member of the West Ham Voice for $1.99 a month. You get additional content, and all money raised through the membership scheme goes to Prostate Cancer UK. So let's get on with it. The main headline, of course, is Lucas Paqueta. He's not going to be in the squad for the game against Sunderland this coming weekend. I, for one, am not really sorry to hear that. And another is, according to some media sources, as I've said, Manchester clubs are fighting over the signing of Mateus Fernandes. And then there's also the story of James Ward-Prowse and Callum Wilson's futures being undecided. And finally, despite the noise, Crysencio Summerville and Tomas Soucek updates as well. At a time when we're looking desperate to increase our squad, all the papers seem to be, and social media columns, seem to want to write about players leaving. Let's start with Paqueta, shall we? Because, as mentioned just a moment ago, it's pretty evident that the whole transfer saga with Paqueta could be reaching its endgame. Even in Nuno's press conference, the Sunderland pre-match press conference, even he had to admit that Paqueta would not be part of the matchday squad to face Sunderland this weekend. Does it mean a deal is edging closer for him to go back to his boyhood club? I don't know. West Ham are reluctant to sell at a reduced price, at a discounted price. It's obvious that Flamengo are struggling to get the money together, the funds together, to be able to afford this player. So how's this all going to pan out? Well, Flamengo's director of football, or technical director, sorry, Jose Boto, has had his say on the issue. He stated that this is the first and last time he's going to talk about the Paqueta case. I bet you it won't be. He went on to say, it's well known that Flamengo are not going to hide from anyone that they really want Paqueta at the club. It's also well known that Paqueta really wants to go to the club. You know, everything is ready. Every negotiation is being had. But he mentioned there's a third party. And that third party, of course, is none other than West Ham United. He went on to say there is a third party that isn't convinced about selling the player. Boto added, we've had significant progress on this issue, but it's a very difficult operation. We're talking about values and players of a very high value. So then if he's a very high value, why are Flamengo hoping to get him on the cheap? He went on to say, we'll have to be patient, count on West Ham's cooperation, negotiate with them. It's not like in Football Manager, there are many things involved. It seems from that statement that there are internal discussions going on at West Ham. If we are looking at maybe not selling him, perhaps there are still internal discussions going on between Nuno and the board as to whether we should or shouldn't sell Lucas Paqueta. We know that Nuno wants the player to stay, but it seems that he might be one of only a few people that do want him to stay. In his press conference, Nuno stated that the situation is the same as last week. You know, he went on to say that we hope that the club and Lucas can find a solution. He won't be in the squad against Sunderland this weekend. We have to assess his injury day by day. Now, whoever still believes that Paqueta has got a back injury, well, come on, people. Look, the board would sell, but only if Flamengo realise the value that West Ham have set, which is 45 million euros. Flamengo apparently have only offered 30 million with 5 million in add-ons. So they are effectively not only just 10 million short, but 15 million short, because these add-ons may not be, realised. I would imagine that Flamengo being unable to find the money and that West Ham needing to find a replacement might eventually stall this deal from happening until the summer. And West Ham are absolutely right to hold on to for the right money. How many times have we been accused of selling players on the cheap? But would Paqueta staying till the end of the season be the right solution for everyone? I've already mentioned in the past, in a show earlier this week, that I would worry if Paqueta did stay. I think we should kind of cut our losses and let him leave. But at the same time, I believe that holding out for the right amount of money is also the right thing to do. The team have demonstrated what we can achieve without him. We drew 2-2 without him in the away game against Bournemouth. And to be honest, we should have won that game. We drew 1-1 in the away game against Man United, where our second half performance was excellent and that it was a great comeback. We had an awful blip, I know, against Wolves. But then the last game against Spurs away, when we won 2-1 again without him, it's testament to the fact that we have a solution, a way of playing without Paqueta. In a way, for me, it's almost a sense of freedom when Paqueta's not playing. It's as if when he does play, everything seems to have to revolve around him, go through him. But when he's not playing, the other players seem to step up and all take equal responsibility, just like they did in the win over Spurs and then the comeback against Man U. I also think the majority of fans, to be quite honest, now want an end to the Paqueta soap opera so that we can all move on. As I mentioned earlier this week, I'm worried that we're going to run out of time in the Premier League transfer window before it shuts to sell him, and we won't have time to bring in a replacement. And then when it does shut, the January window shuts on the 2nd of February, he might continue to agitate for a move, and then we might end up having to reluctantly let him go before the Brazilian window shuts in March. Next week, maybe. We all thought it was going to be the end of last week, didn't we? Right, what else is happening? Well, instead of focusing on players coming in, as I've said, the talk is more about players leaving, or supposedly leaving. If we're to believe every single transfer rumour that's out there, at this moment in time, West Ham are likely to lose or loan out up to something like 8 players before the window shuts. Mateus Fernandes to Manchester clubs, Mads Hermansen in a swap deal with Spurs, Crysencio Summerville to Spurs, James Ward-Prowse to either Everton or more likely Burnley, Lucas Paqueta, as I've already said, to Flamengo, Guido Rodriguez to either Gremio or Valencia or any other club in South America or Europe that might be throwing their name in the mix, Soungoutou Magassa to a Champions League team in Italy, and Tomas Soucek to a Champions League team in Turkey. I mean, it's quite bizarre, is it not? And yet the vast majority of these transfer stories linking yet more players to leave most of them have no element of truth in them whatsoever, and are designed probably more to stir up anxiety and anger amongst the fan base. We're already in a bad way, so why not mix it up a bit and really get us going, hey? I dare say from the list that I've given you there may be a desire for Nuno to want to allow a couple of players to leave, and they're more likely to be Hermansen and Ward-Prowse. But the others? Just where the story of apparently Mateus Fernandes having the Manchester clubs fighting over him comes from who? It's anyone's guess. It's told in such a manner that West Ham seem to have no say in the issue whatsoever. It comes as no surprise that there will be a release clause in the 21-year-old player's contract should we get relegated, a relegation clause. It'd be no different to what he had in his contract at Southampton. That's how we managed to get him in the first place. So hardly surprising, really. He's been excellent for West Ham this season, and he will continue to improve. It will be an achievement if we hold on to him next season, even if we don't get relegated. But one story seems to suggest that West Ham are actually actively encouraging the Manchester clubs to make bids so that we would achieve a high return on him now rather than probably letting him go for cheaper should we get relegated at the end of the season. Look, I know West Ham owners can be many unsavoury things, but even I Even I don't think they're stupid enough to do such a thing when we're fighting relegation. We stand a far better chance of avoiding the drop with Fernandes in the team than we would if we sold him this month. For me, this is a stupid story, as stupid as it really gets. Now, the whole swap deal between Mads Hermansen and Spurs keeper Antonin Klinski does sound a little odd to me, to be really, really honest with you. I do wonder if it's been made up purely for content. The link, Hermansen and Thomas Frank, they're both Danish. That's about it. That's as far as this link goes. You know, why this is being rumoured in the first place. Look, to be honest, if it happens, okay, great. Perhaps each manager recognises the qualities of the two keepers involved. But whatever happens, it is fairly evident that Nuno does not favour Hermansen and would like to find a replacement. And what about the sale, or the supposed sale, or the bid coming in for Crysencio Summerville from Spurs? When a senior source at the club was asked, the response was pretty blunt. There's no possibility the player will leave in this window. And the same goes for Tomas Soucek. Apparently, Soucek is interesting Galatasaray, where the story has been described as unfounded rumour. Again, that came from a senior source at the club. That leaves Rodriguez and Magassa. And again, both rumours have been flatly denied. So it doesn't look as if we're trying to get rid of all the squad just because we might be a sinking ship. It's more that the rumours being put out there just to cause a little bit of unrest. Now, one player that is almost certain to leave is James Ward-Prowse. And the club that's interested in him is apparently Burnley. When Nuno was questioned about this in his press conference, his reply to the journalist was that he was asked to comment on rumour, and that he and Ward-Prowse have already had conversations about his future. And if there was anything to say, then that would be the time to do so. But he basically hit back at the journalists and said, look, all you're asking me about is rumour. There's nothing concrete. There's nothing substantial. Look, Burnley are looking for a central midfielder as a replacement to the injured Josh Cullen, and Ward-Prowse could be a good signing for them. But just why would West Ham entertain another team fighting relegation? It would seem rather bizarre to me. But never say never. It's quite possible that Nuno just may want to let that player go, and even if it's Burnley, then so be it. Apparently, exploratory talks have been had, but nothing is likely to happen until after this weekend's fixtures. Right, what about players coming in? Well, before I do that, like I've said earlier on, if you're new to the channel or if you've yet to subscribe, having watched me before, click on that QR code in the corner and you'll be able to go straight to the subscription page free of charge. Right, well, as I stated earlier in the week, Keiber Lamadrid is now our third signing of the transfer window. And again, as I stated, Nuno confirmed, again in his press conference, that the player is not ready for Premier League football and will conduct like a pre-season in the development squad, the under-21s. Nuno's ambition is clear, and it seems that Lamadrid was not the priority right now. And it was interesting that he stated that the club had signed this player. If you recall, when we signed both Pablo and Castellanos, Nuno made it clear that it was he that wanted those players at the club. But it's just interesting that slight nuance in the language, that the club had signed Lamadrid, but that it was him that wanted Pablo and Castellanos. Look, Nuno still needs to balance the squad and have more options. And by this, even though he didn't want to say which positions he wants to rebalance, it clearly means that we need more defenders, potentially a winger, and as backup to Summerville and Bowen. And if Paqueta does finally leave in this window, another creative midfielder is what we need. But clearly, he's looking for a goalie instead. So who, if anyone, are we targeting? Well, goalies I've already mentioned. The link to Spurs' Kinski has been mentioned. But one goalie who's now unlikely to be part of the list, the long list of goalies that we're looking for, is Chelsea backup keeper Philip Jorgensen, who picked up an injury. But however, Toulouse keeper, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this correctly, Guillaume Restes, is the new number one target between the sticks. At 20 years of age, he has become the number one keeper at his club, Toulouse, and even has made 5 appearances for the French national side, which seems as if he is now the preferred goalie, or maybe second or third choice, to our very own Alphonse Areola. I can't remember the last time Areola was actually recalled back into the French squad. However, having said that, I think Areola has been superb since his return to the senior team. Restes, as I've said, demands a €20 million valuation, and is widely regarded as a keeper who can possibly go to the very top. Exceptionally quick reflexes, especially in close range situations, great agility, very calm on the ball, with the ball at his feet. He's got very good distribution skills, and he's very highly regarded for such a young keeper. And he's very mature and focused. Now, for me, if we did go for him, if there is really serious interest, and if there's any remote chance that we might be able to get him, I don't think he'll just be considered as a replacement for Hermansen in this West Ham squad. He could really be a challenger for Areola's number one position. In midfield, apparently we're closing in on a deal for 22-year-old Nigerian midfielder Tochukwu Nnadi. Apparently, talks over a 5-year deal are progressing well, and he will cost no more than around £3.5 million. He currently plays for Belgian club Zulte Waregem in the Belgian Pro League and has recently represented Nigeria in the AFCON. The 22-year-old defensive midfielder's stock has risen during AFCON for his impressive midfield displays. He has strong defensive instincts, shielding the defense really well, excellent positional discipline. He allows the flair players to strive forward whilst holding a deep line, and his pass accuracy rate is extremely high. He's exactly the type of under-the-radar sort of player, midfielder, that I would imagine someone like Max Harm is helping to identify for the club's future. But is he one for the future rather than the here and now? Perhaps not. Perhaps, I don't know. He certainly sounds like another worthy addition, indeed, if a deal is close to being completed. Maybe. Does that mean that if he comes in, that maybe another player might be leaving? All the names I've mentioned that might be staying, who knows? As far as replacing Paqueta is concerned, it's a name I've mentioned the other day, is Paris FC midfielder Ilan Cabal. But as I mentioned again earlier this week, Cabal sounds more like a Bowen type of player who primarily plays out on the right side of attack and likes to cut in. This season, the Algerian international has scored 7 goals with 4 assists for Paris FC in 17 appearances. Now, only Marseille's Mason Greenwood and Rennes striker Esteban Lepol have provided more goal contributions in the French league this season. Look, we do need more options out wide. There's no denying that. We do need sort of backup options for both Summerville and Bowen. And at 15 to 20 million euros, the price tag, I guess, is also achievable. But the one thing that we're really, really crying out for is a central defender. So many names have been mentioned, yet nothing concrete seems to be in play. And the latest link is Spurs defender RADU Dragusin. Now, apart from Charlie Creswell, all the other central defender links have become like a who's who of either players who are coming to the tail end of their careers or players who have had pretty serious injuries or are injury prone. And Dragusin seems to be the latter. Look, at 23 years of age, he's actually quite a decent defender, having developed at youth level at Juventus. Spurs bought him for 23 million euros in 2024. However, he's only made 38 senior appearances for the North London club. But that is because he suffered a cruciate ligament tear a year after he joined the club, which has kept him out for almost a whole year. He returned to the senior team in December, and he's made just a 5-minute appearance since then against Crystal Palace in December itself. The rest of the time, he's been on the bench. Might Spurs be looking to offload the player, who is still valued at around 20 million euros? It's undoubtedly going to be a bit of a high risk, a bit of a gamble because of the injury that he's had. But if there is any real interest in Dragusin, then I wouldn't say no. It's quite interesting that since the sale of Kudus, that we've started to be linked to players from Spurs and players from us linked to them. Really weird. Look, that's the roundup. Short and sweet. Well, 20 minutes long, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, please do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you again fairly soon, because I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot more transfer stories to talk about. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you soon.